everybody. How you doing out there? Hopefully you can hear me okay. Once again, I got a little bit of a cold. I live in North Dakota, so we tend to go through this on a regular basis. So just go ahead and post hello. I'm looking for your chats here so we can talk a little bit. This is a webinar that is open to anybody that's in our clubs, and it's going to be happening on a monthly basis. So what I want to do is I want to get together with you and talk about what you're doing, any questions you've got on anything, anything that you're excited about, you know, anything that's troubling you, and we're going to go from there. So I just want to make sure you can see me okay and you can hear me okay. Which it looks like everything's okay. So I'm just going to be hanging out for a while. And, you know, again, if you have any questions, remember, you can always email me before a webinar, and we can talk about anything. Otherwise, you can just chat right here online, and we can talk about whatever you want as well. Awesome, Scott. Nice to hear from you. I hope everything is going okay for you. You know, everybody else will be rolling in here as well. But Scott, is there anything in particular that you have any questions about, or anything you'd like me to discuss for you today, buddy? And I know there's a little bit of lag between when I talk and when you can respond, but I'll try and get to everybody. And any questions, again, we'll do this every month. So if you have something that you didn't get answered on Facebook, or you just want me to elaborate on a little bit, I am here to help you. Hey, Steve. Awesome. From Germany. You are hardcore. What time is it in Germany anyway, Steve? Best way to get bar chords down, Scott. Okay. So let's just start with Scott's question. You guys can keep rolling them in. I'm going to talk to everybody here. So Scott, the best way to get bar chords down, the first thing you got to get used to, I'm going to show you a couple little tricks that you can do. The trick with a bar chord is, of course, you're going to be using, I'm going to do a 6th string bar chord. So I'm going to be pressing on all 6 strings. But the trick that I use is, instead of using the flat part of my finger, what I do is I use the side of my finger. Because if you think about it, if you were to kind of feel your finger, it's midnight in Germany, Steve. Awesome to see that you're here, buddy. If you kind of touch the side of your finger, you'll see it's a bit straighter than it is when you do this, because this is where your knuckles are. This is how you turn your finger. So what I do is, instead of going straight on like this, which forces my elbow out like this, I turn my finger just a little bit to the side, which brings my elbow in. And then what happens is if my finger has a little bit of turn in it like this, it's still a straight edge, just like this. Hey, Sasha. Awesome. And Steve just got back from jamming with his band, which is awesome. So Scott, if you think about it, if you just turn the finger a little bit, now the first thing to do with bar chords is, now I'm on a distortion channel here and I can take that off if I need to, but the first thing to try and get comfortable with is getting the pressure of all 6 strings. Okay. And again, don't do that straight. Try and turn the finger just a little bit so you can curl it a little bit. The thing you want to avoid, Scott, are your knuckle points, because those are pushed in, right? So you want to avoid those when you're pressing on a string, because that string won't work. Still trying to get connected in. Okay. Yep, John, you should be okay if you just, maybe if you log out and log back in, buddy. So if you can get those working. The other thing, Scott, that can make a big difference, because then you got your other fingers, and those are usually pretty good. You just have to make sure that your wrist is far enough down to where there's distance here, right? If I turn this way, you can see that I'm not back like this. I've got ample distance right here. So again, when I take my finger and I put it on there, kind of turn it a little bit, which kicks my elbow in a little bit. So again, I'm not playing like this. I'm playing with my guitar kind of in here. So now I got room for my elbow. Okay, now I take my other fingers and put them on there, and I got some space here, right? I'm not all the way back like this. I'm sitting like this. You can try that a little bit, Scott, while we're doing this webinar. You can try that a little bit. And the other thing, you know, I went out of focus a little bit there. I'm not sure what happened. But the other thing I want you to think about, Scott, is not only that. Let me see if I can get this back. Trying to get it back in focus. I'll figure it out. Anyway, so Scott, that's awesome. The knuckle points are what you want to watch. And the other thing I want you to think about, Scott, is that the thickness of the strings and how far the strings are away from the fretboard. Okay, the farther away the strings get from the fretboard, the harder it is to press down. And if you've got really, really thick strings on there, people always say, well, that's going to help for your tone and stuff, which is true. But the problem with it is if the strings are too darn thick, it's hard to press down on. Like that's why you always have problems with an acoustic versus an electric guitar. Acoustic has thicker strings, and the strings tend to be further away from the neck. So hopefully that helps you a little bit, Scott. Does anybody, including Scott, if you guys have any questions about anything, I'm here to help you with anything that you're working on right now, from scales to theory to songs to songwriting to learning other people's songs, just anything that comes to your mind. And while you're doing that, I'm going to try and move this a little bit and see if I can get a little bit better focus. That seems to be a little bit better. That'll help you a little bit. Okay. Hey, John, hopefully you got connected back. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions about anything at all? Whether it's guitar tone, whether it's strings, whether it's pickups, just anything guitar-wise. We're going to meet once a month, and I just want to be able to answer all your questions. So anything that you've got going on, we can talk about. So I'll give you a second to respond with any questions that you might have. I'm not sure why my Logitech is being icky. So now it's in tune, or my face is a little fuzzy, but that's okay. My face is fuzzy anyway. As long as you can see my guitar, that's what I want. Okay. Steve says, I would like to write a song, and you all should be able to see this chat as well. I would like to write a song as it was planned in the Elite Club, also to record. Is it still possible? Well, Steve, it will be. It's just going to take a little while. We need to get through the silly season right now, but I think that would be something that would be really fun to be able to do on one of our monthly webinars, is to talk about writing a song and then give you ideas on how to record it as well. And maybe what I'll do is I'll even record, like I was going to do. What Steve is referring to is we had this idea for an Elite 100 club, but we didn't get enough people signed up, which is totally fine. Maybe the timing is just bad for that. But one of the things that I'd like to teach you how to do is elements of songwriting. And not only writing, but then being able to record as well. So, and there's a lot of stuff involved in that, but maybe what we could do over the course of 2016, Steve and everybody else, is maybe I could record what I call a bed, which is all the parts of the song, right? The drums and the bass and the guitar and all that stuff. And then you guys could record parts over the top of it as well. Steve in particular, although anybody can answer this, Steve, are you using a recording software now to record with? Is there something in particular that you're using to record? Because that's something I'd like to teach all of you how to do, is if you don't already know how to do some recording on your computers at home, you really should, because it's so easy to get great sounds, and you don't have to spend a lot of money, and there's just so many options that you have. And that way, if I do record a bed, what you can do is you can take that bed that I've recorded and you can put it into your recording software, and then you can record along with it. So let's say, for instance, I record a bed that's just bass and drums, right? And then you bring it in, and then you write a guitar part over the top of it, and we jam together that way, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of different ways that we could approach songwriting, Steve, and everybody else. Would be number one, we talk about songwriting and how songwriting works, although there's a million different ways of being able to do it. And then number two is teaching you how to write and use recording software at home, which I'd really, really like to teach you how to do, because it's just, 20 years ago, that was never something that you could do. Or even 30 years ago, when I was growing up, in the 80s, I was born in 1970. So in the 80s, when I started playing, and, the only way you could record yourself was with like a tape deck that, you'd press play and record at this little cassette player and things like that. And now you can just record the most incredible things out of your house for little of no money. Or if you spend a couple, $300-400, you can get just, drums and all kinds of cool stuff. So, Steve says, I would very much like the music theory for life class. Cool. Yeah, I agree. Based on the songwriting would be easier than before. I completely agree with you, buddy. So let's talk about that. Steve, email me afterwards and let's see what we can figure out for you. Make sure that we got something that's working for you. And then, like I said, everybody that's on this call and further, what we're going to be doing on these monthly webinars, sometimes we're going to have more than one webinar per month too, because there's just so much stuff for us to talk about. And I love doing this. I love hanging out. So one thing I'd like to do is get you to understand how the songwriting thing kind of works. Now, what I want to do, first of all, before I move on to that, I'm going to share my screen with you and I'm going to show you something here. But before I do that, does anybody have any other questions about some song stuff? Okay. Do you have any questions about, I shouldn't say song stuff, just club stuff in general? Beginning club, blues club, soloing club, theory. You know, the Nitro Club is a really cool club because it covers like all kinds of different stuff. If you're in theory and, you know, techniques and things like that, there's just a bunch of really, really neat stuff in there. So if anybody has any questions, throw them out there. And if not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, let me make this bigger so I can show you this. I'm going to show you, I've got kind of a crazy elaborate setup that I use for webinars and for recording and things like that. So that way, when you hear me, my voice is fairly decent. You can see my mic right here. I've got this shotgun mic right here. And then my guitar is actually running into my computer. And most of the stuff that I do, which is what I'd like to teach you how to do. Again, I can give you the overall today, but someday we're going to have just actual classes on how to do this. But basically what you're doing is I'm running my guitar into what's called an audio interface. And while I'm talking about this, if anybody out there has any questions about anything, just chime in and I will help you. Let's see, Steve says, what will be the difference in the new guitar clubs to the concepts until now? Well, the big difference with the clubs now is that they're going to be far more interactive. Like there's two main things that make the clubs different. Number one, instead of giving you 45,000 videos and then you got to try and sift through, the goal is I'm trying to make content that is absorbable each month. And then with that, and of course, every month you'll get new stuff and you'll have the old stuff, but not only will you get that content, but then you're going to have a bonus content that kind of reflects what the main content was about. And what I've started doing is trying to do it with popular songs and things like that, things that you know. So if I'm talking about finger picking, I relate it to an actual song so I can teach you how to play not only that particular technique, but I can show you in the real world what it actually does. The other big thing about the clubs is that we're going to try more connection with people. So if you live, for instance, in Croatia, which Sasha does, we're going to have a system set up so you can find people within a certain radius of you that are in Croatia, or if you live in LA or whatever it might be, that sort of thing. And like I said, my big thing is that what I want to focus on is once I've got this content all situated really, really good, which I've got a lot of stuff already set up, and I'm working on it every day. You know, the other big thing that I want to do is I want to be able to have these kind of discussions where we get together and we talk about stuff. So you email me beforehand and go, hey, Steve, I'd really love to talk about this, or I'd really love to talk about that. And then I take all of those comments from people and then I formulate what we're going to talk about. So if we want to talk about songwriting, we do. If we want to talk about changing strings, we do. If we want to talk about bending, we do. If we want to talk about an exotic scale, we can talk about all kinds of different things. And then I've got some friends as well that will be doing some webinars as well, like Glenn Drover from Megadeth is going to do some stuff for me. And then I've got Toshi Asida that's going to be doing some stuff for me, for you, I should say. And then I've got Rob Ash, who's just a really great friend of mine, just a great player. All these guys are going to be, you know, doing webinars to help you with different things. And then you'll get other people's perspective too, not just me. So if that kind of makes sense, Steve and everybody else, that's my goal, is that for 2016, I want to make sure that what you're getting for content, for lessons, you're actually applying. Now, that's always been my goal as a guitar teacher, is not just to try and slam 8 million things down your throat and then you don't know what the heck to do with it. I'd rather teach you how to do something and then actually use it to better yourself as a musician. So that's what's going on. So let me show you something. If I can figure out how to share my screen here, give me just a second. Screen share. There we go. Okay, I'm going to share this. All right. So hopefully you can all see my screen right now. Okay. So this program that I'm showing you right now is actually, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to come back. I want to make sure that you all could actually see that. Were you able to see that? Was anybody able to see that app, that program that I was just showing you? Because if you could, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'll give you just a second here. Okay, perfect. Sasha, Scott, thank you guys. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that, okay? Because once I click over to that, I can't see your chat anymore. So I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to share that. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this program is called Mixcraft Pro, okay? Now, there are many different programs out there, and if you have a pencil and if you've never done this before, again, if you chat with me, I can't see it until I stop sharing this, and then we'll talk about it. But this is called a digital audio workstation, or what people refer to as a DAW. Okay. Now I'm running a PC. I don't have a Mac. I've always been a PC guy, and we don't need to argue about that. There's stuff, like Mac already comes with GarageBand, which works just fine. Now I for a very, very long time used what's called Cubase, which is another digital audio workstation. And you can see as I'm talking, you can see the little lights are moving up and down here because that's my vocal channel. And then you'll see here's my guitar channel. And you'll see the lights move on that. Okay. So with this software, what I do is I plug my guitar into an audio interface. Now, an audio interface is something that you can plug a microphone and a guitar into, and then that usually comes out with a USB and plugs into your computer. That's all it does. So I've got lots of cool suggestions if you ever want to buy something, but it's really simple. You just run your guitar into this audio interface, and then you run your microphone in there, and then you just set the levels. If the levels are too hot, they'll turn red, so you just back it off a little bit. And that's all you do. You run the USB line into your computer. And then what happens is, like here, what I'm doing with this software, I would open this software and I would go to my preferences. So then this one, for instance, is input 1. This is input 2. Okay. And then I actually have input 3 was that if you heard it in the beginning here, listen right here. So that's my iPhone running into the audio interface as well. There's 3 channels. I actually have 4 channels on this audio interface. So I have guitar and microphone and then my iPhone running into it. And then what I do is I can just adjust down here. If you can see my mouse, I can adjust my volume levels and all that kind of stuff. And if I go over to my guitar here and I hit effects, there's all kinds of different things in here that you can choose from to get different kinds of sounds, different distortion sounds and things like that. And then what's really neat about Mixcraft, and the reason I've switched to Mixcraft, number one, it's cheaper. Number two, it's much easier. It's very, very, very easy to use. And the other thing that's really neat about it is it comes with a lot of different stuff. Like if I click on library here, and then I can go to library and choose like samples or loops or whatever it might be. Here I can choose, the instrument or whatever it might be. But if you just look down here at all this stuff that's in here, I can click on something and you get all these different cool sounds, right? I could do let's do, I don't want to bore you with this, power ballad, right? So I got drums here. And boom, you got yourself a drum track. So then what I would do is I would just drag that up here, and then I got a drum track. So I'm going to come back to you now just to kind of see. So it's that easy. I mean, it's learning how to record stuff. And what's really neat about that, guys, is if you have some jam tracks and stuff from us, which I'm sure you do, you can import that jam track in here, and then you can record yourself playing. One of the biggest things that I ever did for myself that made a big difference in my playing when I was younger was recording myself. Now, I had to do it the old-fashioned way because I'm old, and you know, we had to do it differently back then. But once I could actually hear my progress, I could decide on things that I was doing right or things I thought would be better or whatever it might be. And it made me feel better. So when I was playing, it actually made me feel better because I could hear what I was doing right or what I was doing wrong. And Steve, is that similar to GarageBand or Logic on the Mac? It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Boy, there it comes in, and then it goes out again. So my face is out of focus, but my guitar is in focus. Yes, it's exactly like that. The big thing, guys, that I want you all to think about when it comes to recording, and I actually just got off the phone with Dan about this as well, is that what you want to do when it comes to plugging into something and then that going in your computer and then you got software is setting it up so it's really, really easy to hit record. Because if you have to spend, like, back even 5 years ago, probably maybe a little longer than that, but when I used to do this stuff, you know, I did a lot of recording and things like that. I didn't do as much video as I do now, but what sucked was I'd be all in the mood for recording something or whatever it might be, and then it would take me 30 minutes or an hour to get everything set up and get all the levels optimal and blah, blah, blah. And by that time, I was just out of the mood. I just wasn't in the mood for it anymore. And so the trick to this stuff is, and again, I'm here to help you, but the trick to this stuff is getting it all set up so when you feel like recording, you come in, you plug in that guitar, you open up that software, and boom, it's ready to go. That's what you want to do. Now, unfortunately, I can't shut down the software and then reopen it for you, because if I shut it down, you won't hear me anymore. But that's what I do. So when I come into my room and I'm going to do some recording for you or for me or whatever it is, I open up my Mixcraft software. And again, you might be using GarageBand and do the same thing. And you can save what's called templates. So my template is called Steve 2015. So when I open that, it opens what you just looked at. It opens up all of that with this guitar tone already built. It's already set up for that. Everything opens just to that. So I'm already ready to record. My vocal is ready to go. My guitar is ready to go. I can pull up those drum tracks, whatever I want to do, and I can just go at it. So my guitar is running. I'm not trying to bore you, so if I'm boring you, you got to let me know. So as I run from my guitar into the audio interface, the levels are already set. They're already ready to go. The mic level is already ready to go. My guitar level is already ready to go. Now, if I plugged in, for instance, a bass, which I do use for different things, I might have to boost that level just a little bit. But most of the time, it's fine. It's pretty darn close. So that's it. So then I record my parts. I'm going to go back and show you this. Okay. So let's say I'm gonna share it again. Is everybody okay with what I'm doing? Am I boring anybody? Is there anything else you want to talk about? Or are you kind of interested in this? Because again, I don't really have any questions. I just think this stuff is really neat, and it's just really freeing when you learn how to do this, because then you can do whatever the heck you want. You know, you can record over somebody else's tracks. If we just start doing something together, probably the tracks of Steve says the Mixcraft Pro and Logic they're not interchangeable, Steve. The tracks are not interchangeable, but if you save the tracks either collectively or independently as WAV files or MP3s, then it is. If you save it as a session, that session is unique to Mixcraft, and it's unique to Logic, and it's unique to Cubase. But saving a WAV file is a WAV file. The only thing I've ever found, and I've done session work all over the country, actually on 3 different continents, and The only thing I ever find with saving WAV files is sometimes if I'm going to send 7 WAV files to somebody in Nashville that I've recorded, so I send them 7 independent WAV files, and then they take all those WAV files and they bring them into their digital audio workstation, is sometimes they need to be just adjusted just mildly. So what I'll do is, if I'm going to do that, which I just did, I don't know, a couple weeks ago to a guy in Nashville, I'll send him an overall track of all the stuff I've done, so that way he can listen to it. And then I'll send him the individual track. So if something's off just a little bit, he can listen to that mixed track and make adjustments as needed. So that's a really easy way of doing it. So Steve, if you just save them as WAV files, either collectively, like if I was going to send you guys a bed, I would save the bass and the drums, and you know, if I send you bass, drums, and guitar, then maybe you'd solo over the top. If I took the guitar out and just did bass and drums, then maybe you'd write your own guitar part to it. You see? And if you had software like this, you could record that guitar part, maybe record a set of a solo or whatever you want over the top. So again, everybody, if you want me to keep going, I'm going to show you a couple more things that are kind of neat about this. I'm not trying to bury you with stuff, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's just, you know, what used to cost $50,000 to go into a studio now costs you, you know, $100 or $200, and you're good to go. So let me know if this is going okay. I think Steve is digging it, but I want to make sure Scott, Sasha, everybody out there, that you guys are you interested in this as well? Okay, awesome. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go back to screen sharing, and I'm going to show you something, okay? All right. Okay, here we go. So now I'm back here again, all right? So now what happens is, let's say I do this. So I'm going to take this power ballad drum, I'm going to pull it up, I'm going to put it right here. Okay, see, it's saying the sound is in a different tempo than your project. For the best sound quality, do you want to change it? Sure, that's fine. I'll change it to 57. So now I'm set for 57 beats a minute. So now it looks like this. Pretty cool, huh? So now I can take that track, and I can copy it, and I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to paste it, and I'll paste it one more time, like that. So now I've got the same track. Now I could add different drum tracks, but there it is. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to record, I'm going to show you 3 because we're not using that right now. And I have to leave my vocal on because otherwise I can't talk to you. If I do this, see, then you can't hear me. So I need to have that on. So I'm going to leave that on even though I'm not going to sing because you don't want to hear that. That would be horrible. So I'm going to record a guitar part for you. Okay, you ready? So I'm going to push play and record, and here we go. See? So now I've got this. Now you can hear it. Okay. So now let's say I go, wow. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my guitar. Sorry about that. I'm going to right click on it. And okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that guitar track. I'm going to delete it though. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second guitar track. So here we go. I'm going to record. I'm going to shut off this guitar track now. About that. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Now I'm going to record a second guitar track. Here we go. You see, it's that easy. So now I've got two. Now, don't worry about my vocal tracks here because like I said, I just have to leave that on so you can actually hear me talking. But so now I've got two guitar tracks, right? Now here's a cool little thing that you can do. This is something that you can learn how to do. Is I'm going to take those two tracks, those two guitar tracks, this one and this one, and I'm going to pan them. So I'm going to take that one and move it over here. I'm going to take that one and move it over here. There we go. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. And now it's going to, now I don't know if it'll sound different on your side or not because it's in stereo. But over here it sounds freaking cool. So that's how this works. And those are the kind of things I want to show you how to do. Okay. And again, it's really neat. Let me try and move that back here. There we go. And move that back without wasting your time here. There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you see what I did then, it was that easy. All I did was, now I could change, again, we can keep going with this, but it would take a while, and that's okay. You know, that's why we might have a couple of different webinars for this. But so I recorded one track of guitar, and then I went back and recorded another track of guitar doing something a little different, although I could have done the same thing. And then I hard panned them. I panned one all the way left and one all the way right. Okay. Another thing I could have done was, the beauty of recording into the computer is the guitar sounds that I'm getting are from the computer, from the software itself. They're coming from Mixcraft. And so what I can do is, after I've done the recording, I can actually go back and change the guitar tone, which is called reamping. People do it all the time. I've been in studios where you'll record with a huge rig of gear, and then they'll go back and they'll record it and it sounds great, but then they'll go back and they'll run it through a VST like I'm talking about right now and use a different tone. So if I liked that first track, but I didn't want the second track to have the exact same guitar tone because it might be too much, I can change that second guitar tone. So now they're panned and they have a little bit different guitar tone, which makes it sound even bigger. And that was, and again, you might already know this, but that was a huge revelation to me of like how bands like Metallica and whoever got these huge guitar tones. It's because what James Hetfield would do from Metallica is he'd go in the studio and he'd record his rhythm part, and then he'd record it again, and then he'd record it again, and then he'd record it again, and then record it again. He would just keep recording the same thing, so it would just get thick. And then they would just pan it. They would keep panning at different stages. You know, they'd have a hard left and a hard right, but they'd have other ones in between. And they'd also use different amps. So that way, this thing just sounded freaking huge. And the cool thing about having the same person, like I always thought, what an egotist, you know, he didn't have Kirk Hammett recording the rhythm parts. You know, why didn't he do that? Because he wanted to do it all himself. That's not true at all. It's because one person can record the same part more accurately than two different people. So it's way easier for him to record his same part 7 times and get it, again, it's going to be just a teeny bit off each time, but that's what makes it sound so huge. Where maybe if I wrote the rhythm part and then you went back and tried to play the rhythm part, and then somebody else, you know, if Scott recorded a rhythm part and Steve recorded a rhythm part and Sasha recorded a rhythm part, the same part, and I recorded it, it would be so much different that it really wouldn't blend well. Where if I recorded that part 4 times, it would be a lot closer. And then I pan them differently, I reamp them, and all of a sudden it sounds huge. And then Kirk Hammett or Scott or Steve or Sasha or somebody comes in and they do the solo over the top. Right? So now he's doing his thing that James Hetfield cannot do. He's able to add that part on top, and then they go from there, and there's a million other things. But that's a really, really great overview of what you can do with, you know, a $50, $100 piece of software. Scott says, sounds good. I use Band in a Box to play along with besides your jam tracks, but I don't know about recording. Yeah, and that's the thing about Band in the Box is Band in a Box is really cool from a MIDI perspective, because that's really what it is it's more MIDI. And I used to use Band in the Box. I've tried just about everything to try and, do good lessons with. And I used to use it to try and make chord progressions and stuff, but they always just sounded so MIDI. And maybe they've gotten better, but for me, it's just easier. Like drum tracks and things like that are actually sampled. Don't get me wrong. So they are in Band in the Box too, but I'm just saying what this does is it kind of erases all the other stuff. This isn't about notation. Mixcraft isn't about creating a lead chart or tablature, or it doesn't do any of that stuff. The only thing it does is it records. That's what it does. And then you mix it down however you want. You add any effects that you want. I mean, literally anything. And it's just that easy. So it's pretty cool if you see how I was able to just pull up these drums and throw them in there. And now there's a lot of other ways that you can do that. There's other programs that I use for drums. Like there's a company, again, if you have a pencil, you can check this out. There's a company out there called ToonTrack, ToonTrack, ToonTrack. And they make their MIDI drums, but they're sampled from actual drummers, from famous drummers, and they make just amazing stuff. The problem with it is it gets kind of expensive. But then the cool stuff about that is because it already is MIDI, you can change it to any tempo you want, and it doesn't falter in its quality. Where you'll notice in Mixcraft, it told me, hey, this is supposed to be at 57. If you change it, it's going to change the quality of it. All I'm saying is, for more bang for your buck, Mixcraft has got a bunch of crap in there that just comes along with the software, guitar tones and effects and vocal effects and drum tracks and, orchestra. I mean, if you look down here, if I go here, there's orchestra stuff in here, like, I mean, you can just go crazy with the stuff that this thing can make. And I know you can't see it, but hopefully you could hear that. So out of all the stuff that I've tried, I just really think Mixcraft is just super easy. Steve says, if you produce a sound wall of several rhythm guitars, do you really play exactly the same, or do you change something? It depends, Steve. Like if I'm going like this, if I want if I'm doing Master of Puppets, like I was writing Master of Puppets, I wouldn't want to change that at all. I want it to be heavy and as tight as possible, and nothing would change about it. Where the example I just gave you that I was recording with, I wanted the parts to be different. But the truth is, if I was really writing that song that I was just playing for whatever it was I just wrote or was messing around with, I shouldn't call it writing, but if I was really doing that, I would double those parts as well. So the thing I was whatever it was I was doing, I would double that as well. And then the other part that was just ringing out, I would double that as well. So it's very easy to all of a sudden have like 14 tracks of guitar stuff, but it's pretty cool. I mean, what I want you to remember, Steve, and everybody else, as you're learning about this, is you don't need 14 different tracks of the same guitar part. If you have recording capability, or you're interested in what we're talking about right now, and all you've ever did was record like a guitar part, and then you record another guitar part differently, whatever, and another guitar part. What I'm saying is, if you just take one guitar part and double it by playing it again, it's automatically going to make your recording sound cooler, way cooler. Okay. I've experimented, and I've talked to studio people and engineers. I used to just think, well, why not just copy and paste it? Why not just copy the track and paste it and then pan them? And the problem with that is that you get, I forget what it's called. It's a cancellation thing, because they're the same thing. There's no subtle changes in them. So if you just copy and paste it and then pan it, it doesn't have the effect. The trick is the human nature. Like, I don't care how accurately you try and play the same track again, it's still going to be subtly different, picking wise, volume wise, dynamic wise, timing wise. It's going to be a little bit different, and that's the trick to recording. So it's just a great little trick. Now, I don't always do that on my solos, because a lot of times my solos are improvised, so I don't double my solos most of the time. But the thing about the solo then is the solo is generally in the center, right? So the center, when I record that solo, it's going to be in the center, and then I've got my rhythm tracks that are kind of panned out from there. So I don't want to go way too deep into recording techniques at this point, although, again, my time with you each month is going to be about this stuff. Whatever you want to talk about is what we're going to do. There's another program out there that you can get that works really well as well. It's called Reaper, Reaper, like Grim Reaper. And that one you can use. I believe it's free for non-commercial use, I think. And they do recommend that at some point you buy it, but I don't think they have like a limitation on it. I don't think like after 30 days it stops working. I think it just keeps going. The only thing is it'll remind you at the beginning, hey, maybe someday you should buy this, which I always thought was really cool about the company. But I haven't used Reaper in a while. But those just give you some different ideas of things to try. So the recording techniques and tactics are things that we'll get into through 2016, for sure. And then different softwares that I use and how to use them and things like that. And again, you don't need to use Mixcraft. I'm not trying to sell you Mixcraft. I'm just saying for years I used Cubase, and I paid $500 every time they'd come out with an upgrade. It'd be $200 or whatever. And it just had way more than I needed. Just it's a great program, don't get me wrong. And I'm a PC guy, so Cubase is kind of the flagship side of things on the PC side. Where Mac, you have Logic, you have Pro Tools. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. You don't always need something like that. I mean, if you owned a recording studio and you had an engineer and you had sound booths and all that, that's when something like Pro Tools can really come in handy. But just for sitting around in your room trying to play some guitar and record some drums and stuff, it's overkill. And it's just, that's like going, I'm going to teach my child how to do the alphabet, so I'm going to teach them backwards and upside down before I ever teach. Don't make it complicating. Just have fun, for God's sakes. Please always remember that. Try and make guitar playing fun, because that's what it's all supposed to be about. So, guys, is there any questions about that so far? Does that all make sense to you? It's pretty cool. What I would recommend is maybe what you do, and stay in touch with me. I mean, email me at steve@guitarzoom.com. I have a guy named George that answers a lot of my emails because I get so many emails. But if it's something that you really need me specifically to answer, just say, this it's really important that Steve read this. It's something that he talked about in his webinar or something. And that way I'll get it and we'll talk about it. Steve says, do you see any advantage to record with mics in front of a real amp? Well, again, Steve, yes. If you have the availability of being able to turn, like back in the 80s, man, you'd go in a studio and you'd have stacks of different amps, and you could turn them up freaking loud. And that's the trick, is not just having an amp and putting a mic in front of it. I'll get to that in a second, but the trick to a really great amp is being able to turn it up really loud and then recording that. That's what you're looking for. The point of modeling like this digital stuff that I'm talking about right now is they've already done that. That's where the tone comes from. They've recorded those amps, those actual amps with those speakers, with that microphone, and then they've made it available to you digitally in a computer. So is there an advantage to it? Yes, but it's not practical. Like, I live in a house with 2 children and a wife, and my wife doesn't want me turning my amp up to 11 in here, and you know what I mean? And the other thing that's really cool about like the stuff that I do for recording, both with the videos that I make and with the music that I write, is that it all stays independent. Like when I'm recording my guitar like this, I can talk over it all as much as I want, and that guitar track isn't going to pick up my vocal. Where if my amp is on the floor and it's got a mic in front of it, and the cat starts meowing or my daughter starts yelling about something, it's going to get picked up in that microphone. And now my track is shot. When it's running direct into my computer, there's nothing to get in the way. And again, please understand, as we move into 2016, this technology is where everybody is going. I mean, even guys like Eddie Van Halen and Yngwie Malmsteen and Joe Satriani and all those guys, even though they have access to all of those amps and things, and not that they don't use them, because they do, they use this stuff too. So they do. I mean, everybody does. Is it lacking some sort of purity and all that sort of thing? Sure it is. I think, again, it's just practicality is what you're looking for. When I was younger and I first started playing out in bands, I thought you had to have a freaking 500 watt amp to play on stage. And then all of a sudden you get out there and realize that there's no stage, you'd have to be in a stadium to be able to use that kind of wattage. So all of a sudden you've got this wonderful amp and you've got it set on 0.00001%. And the tubes are burning and nothing's happening. And then you start learning, well, that's dumb. You're better off having a lower wattage amp that you can turn up louder so you can get those tubes burning to get the tube sound. I had a 200 watt amp that I was just never able to turn up ever. And then I started getting into 100 watters and they were still too loud because, again, if my amp is louder than the PA that I'm playing through, my sound guy hates me and the people in the first 4 rows are deaf, So, then you start learning, well, maybe a 75 watt or a 50 watt. That way you can crank that sucker up. Tube amps are freaking loud anyway. So you crank that sucker up and it's 50 watts. Now you're getting the tubes, they're burning, they're making the sound that you want. And that to me is kind of the trade-off. So, with digital, there's so many reasons why I like digital. Is I can pull up an Eddie Van Halen tone instantaneously. Again, is it perfect? No, I think the only person that gets an Eddie Van Halen tone is Eddie Van Halen because he's still got it in his fingers and the way he plays. But I can get a tone that's very similar to that. Or if I want a Dimebag Darrell tone, or if I want a clean acoustic tone or whatever. There's just so many great things that you can do. So, yeah. Steve says, that's good. Didn't know that even the masters are using them. Yes. Yeah. At 3 a.m. when they're sitting down in a studio, they don't just want this frickin' amp blaring at them either. It's really nice to just have something where, like when I'm playing for you right now, it's just coming through a set of speakers back here and I can talk to you. I'm not going, hello, I can't hear you, I'm deaf, I don't have to do all that. So there's a million reasons why it makes sense. Is it better than the authentic way? No, I don't think so, but it's practical for the rest of us human beings. It just makes sense. So guys, I hope that helps you a little bit. You're going to be able to watch this anytime you want. And just please remember, we're going to do this every month, at least once a month. And I want to help you. You got to let me know what your questions are, what direction you want to go. And I'm just going to be here to help you with whatever you need. So everybody take care and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, just keep an eye on things for each month. It isn't any one particular day that the webinar will be, but it will be every month, at least once a month. And the trick with them is to help you, if there's something in particular. And I love talking about gear and recording, and because like I said, it's once you learn how to do the things that I'm doing, it's so freeing because you can do, there's just so many things that you can do. And all of a sudden you start realizing that you're not so much less than everybody else, like that player is, I'll never be him or I'll never be her. That's just dumb. You can do all kinds of cool things. So anyway, everybody take care and practice hard, and let me know if you have any questions about anything, if there's anything that's bothering you, if you ever have suggestions for things. I am always open to suggestions. My job here is to, till the day I die, is to try and do the best I can to give you good lessons, get you to learn stuff, and not just guitar licks. There's lots of other stuff we can talk about. So maybe you can send me some recordings. Only one in time. Again, Steve, email me after the lesson and let me know kind of what you mean. And let's work on this, Steve. Let's figure out what we can do, okay? So I've got different things. I'm just not sure which recording you're talking about, but let's talk about it afterwards. Just email me at steve@guitarzoom.com and you and I will continue our dialogue, buddy. So Scott, thank you. Sasha, thank you. Steve, I'll talk to you real soon. And let's see, who else do we got here? I think John was having a hard time connecting, so hopefully he'll send me some questions of anything he's got. So thanks. Thanks, Sasha. Everybody take care, and I'll talk to you soon. And like I said, if you have any questions, go to the Facebook community page. If you don't get your questions answered there, let me know, and I am absolutely available to help you. So take care, everybody. Talk to you later.